There is a place that never appeared on maps. No signs, no names, no records. Officially, it did not exist. But between 1936 and 1945, thousands of people were brought there alive and never returned. This place was called Unit 731. It stood in occupied Manchuria near the city of Harbin, behind ordinary walls, behind locked gates, behind silence. To the outside world, it was a research facility. Inside, it was something else entirely. The men who worked here did not call their victims by name. They called them logs. Not prisoners, not patients, not humans. Logs, to be cut, burned, frozen, infected. This was not chaos. It was organized, documented, scheduled. Children were brought here. Women, elderly men, entire families, sometimes together. They were told they were being relocated. They were told they would work. They were told nothing. Inside Unit 731, the goal was not survival. The goal was data. How long a human body could last without water. How quickly frostbite destroys flesh. How disease spreads when no treatment is given. The subjects were conscious. Always. No anesthesia. No mercy. Doctors recorded everything. Heart rate, temperature, time to death. This was called science. And when it was over, the bodies were burned. The records were archived. And the world was never supposed to know. But silence did not last forever. The experiments did not begin themselves. They required planning, funding, personnel, and men willing to cross a line and never return. At the center of Unit 731 stood a physician, not a madman, not a sadist, at least not officially. His name was Shiro Ishii. Ishii was educated, ambitious, obsessed with prestige. He believed Japan could surpass the West, not through industry, but through biology. Disease as a weapon, the human body as a testing ground. Under his command, hundreds of doctors and researchers were recruited. Many were recent medical graduates. Some were top scientists. All wore white coats. They swore the same oath as any physician: to heal, to do no harm. Inside Unit 731, that oath was inverted. Here, harm was the method. Pain was a variable. Death was an outcome, not a failure. Doctors competed for results, for faster conclusions, for recognition. Those who hesitated were reassigned. Those who complied were promoted. Some experiments required patience. Subjects were infected and observed for weeks. Others demanded immediacy. Limbs frozen, then thawed. Organs removed, while the heart was still beating. No anesthesia, not because it was unavailable, but because pain altered the data. Reports were typed, charts were drawn, photographs were taken. The suffering was converted into numbers. And at the end of each day, these men went home. They ate dinner. They laughed. They slept. Evil did not wear a uniform of madness. It wore a lab coat. Inside Unit 731, experiments followed schedules, timetables, protocols. Nothing was improvised. This was not chaos. It was procedure. Each subject was registered. Age, sex, physical condition, then assigned to a category. Plague, cholera, anthrax, typhoid. Diseases were not treated. They were observed. Infected subjects were isolated in cells. Doctors watched through small windows. They recorded every cough, every spasm, every hour until death. Other experiments tested the limits of the body. How long could a human survive in freezing temperatures? Limbs were submerged in ice water, flesh frozen solid, then struck with sticks to hear the sound. Doctors waited until the skin turned black. Only then did they proceed. Amputation followed. Vivisection was common. Organs removed one by one: lungs, liver, heart. The subjects were alive, always alive. This was considered essential. Death altered results. Pain altered results. Only consciousness was acceptable. Some experiments tested weapons, grenades, flamethrowers, chemical exposure. Distances were measured, angles calculated, bodies positioned accordingly. Women were used for pregnancy experiments. Infections passed to unborn children. Outcomes recorded. No exceptions. The victims screamed, begged, prayed. But prayer was not a variable in the experiment. What happened here was not an accident of war. It was a decision, repeated every day. In August 1945, the war began to end. For Unit 731, that meant only one thing: erase everything. Orders were issued quietly. Files were removed from cabinets, drawers emptied, records stacked floor to ceiling. Years of data, names, measurements, deaths, reduced to ink. They burned it all, not in panic, not in haste, but systematically. Prisoners who remained alive were executed, some by gunshot, some by poison, some locked inside buildings set on fire. Witnesses were liabilities. Silence was the final experiment. As Soviet forces advanced, senior personnel fled south, disguised as civilians, blending into crowds, carrying nothing but memory. Some documents survived. Fragments, copies forgotten in haste, testimonies never meant to be heard. But the greatest escape did not involve borders. It involved negotiation. When the United States learned what Unit 731 had done, they faced a choice: prosecute or acquire. The data was unlike anything they possessed. Human limits, biological warfare, information gathered without ethical constraint. A deal was made: immunity in exchange for data. No trials, no prison, no accountability. The files were shipped west. The men returned to normal lives. Some became professors, hospital directors, respected citizens. Justice was classified. When the war ended, the killing stopped, but the silence did not. For years, the victims of Unit 731 had no graves. No names. No memorials. They existed only in fragments, memories, testimony, and absence. In post-war Japan, the subject was avoided. Schools did not teach it. Textbooks skipped it. The doctors returned to society without consequence. Some spoke years later. Not in court, not under oath, but in interviews, in whispers, always late. Survivors, very few, told of the cells, the cold, the waiting, the certainty that no one was coming. In China, memorials were built, museums opened, evidence was preserved. But internationally, the story remained in the shadows. Because acknowledging Unit 731 means acknowledging something uncomfortable. That science does not make morality inevitable. That education does not prevent cruelty. That progress can be built on human destruction. No monuments exist where the experiments took place. The buildings are gone. The ground is quiet. But silence is not innocence. Unit 731 was not a failure of knowledge. It was a failure of choice. And the question it leaves us with is not historical. It is human. What would stop it next time?